Hi, Men's community. Thanks for joining us with another video brought to you by the Merrimack Institute for New Teacher Support at Merrimack College. This is another episode that's in our Civic and Community Engagement playlist series on YouTube. And we're excited to have David Alcox today as our presenter. And so a little bit about David is that he earned his Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from Keene State College, and then got his master's degree in teaching social studies from Indiana University at Bloomington. He's a 3-time New Hampshire Social Studies Teacher of the Year and a 2-time National Civics Educator of the Year. In 2013, he was also the Citizen of the Year in the hometown of Milford, New Hampshire. He's also presented at numerous conferences and institutes, both at the national and state level, on topics of civic education and citizenship. And while at Milford High School, he has led his We the People team, which is a civics class that competes in civic education competitions, to 17 state championships in 22 years. So we're so excited for you to be here with us, and we're excited for you to share. I think you have a photo presentation about how to get students excited and involved with politics and civics through political opportunities. So we're excited to see what you have for us, and please share your screen whenever you're ready.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Amanda. And I will start my share here if you like.
Yeah.
And first, again, thank you for having me. It's an absolute honor to be part of the MINTS program. I've seen and read great things about that. And so getting to the topic of getting students excited about civic education, there's a lot of different things that, you always hear about, kids hate history. It's boring. They just read text. They, do one chapter at a time. And quite frankly, that's very true. And so that's why many times to get kids engaged or excited about it, you have to go outside the book and take them to where politics is. Politics is, living and breathing, and it's existed since the beginning of time. In fact, if you look at the Harvard, if you go to Harvard Harvard University, in their quad, they have a picture of John Harvard, and on the side of the statue is 2 books facing up and 1 book facing down. And the idea behind that was quite often we learn through books, but sometimes you have to turn the book over and go out and explore and learn through real life. So I've always been a real advocate of doing that. And I've always been an advocate of, if you can make government real to kids, then they'll see the value, and maybe that will be what excites them. There's no question statistics, no matter where you go, will show that the lowest voting group is 18 to 24-year-olds. Why is that? Well, and they make up about 33% of our voting population. So why is that a problem? Well, it's a problem because they feel like they're disengaged. Many kids will sit there and say, well, I'm not 18, I can't vote. So what can I do? Or they may even be at college. They may be at Merrimack College and they don't want to go and register for an absentee ballot and so on. So there's constantly a low number of the 18 to 24-year-olds and even below who are actively engaged. And so what I try to do is, again, like I said, make it real. And so with the slideshow that I'm going to show you, I'm going to show you a lot of various opportunities that a teacher could do if they just, kind of look around. It's everywhere around them. You just got to want to, sniff it out and go do it. Would you like me to start with my slides and show you what I mean by that?
Yes, please, definitely.
Okay, well, for example, the first thing that I would do is I would say, find venues that are hosting, places, in New Hampshire and Southern and Massachusetts. New Hampshire's what I believe is, the real New Hampshire advantage is that we get to meet, eat, and greet candidates all the time. If, because we're first in the primaries, everybody and their brother comes there. But that still doesn't take away from other states like Massachusetts and other states in New England, where it's a smaller region. And so there's quite often candidate opportunities. There's quite often, ways to go out and meet these candidates. And quite often people host receptions at houses. For example, this was an example of our Senator back then, Kelly Ayotte, when she was running for the 2018 Senate reelection. They hosted a party at a house. At that house, there was probably maybe 25 people, and half of them were my We the People kids. So my students got chances to, be really active and have, selfies with the senator and get a chance to talk and have a dialogue with them. And, one of the really interesting things is, a lot of times senators, representatives, any types of officials, people are always asking them for stuff. Can you do this for me? Can you do that for me? These are great opportunities for kids to just meet and have an opportunity to talk and listen. And so it's a non-threatening environment because, you're not asking a senator or representative for anything in particular other than a few minutes of their time to hear about themselves. And it's usually very informal. And quite often, the senator or the representative will tell you more, because they don't have a camera in their face. They're not having somebody with their cell phone on, trying to hope for a gotcha moment. And what makes it really fun is the next time you see those candidates, the candidate remembers you and they remember they've had an extended conversation with you. And so they know you, and it's fun if they even know you by name. It makes it a really, really good time. And so a lot of times what I find is that if you can get to these house parties, that's a really great opportunity. If you can't get to the house parties, and even if you wait to the very last day, the thing you can do is go out to where the voting booth is and have them chat with, people who are holding signs. Milford, New Hampshire, we have the longest voting hours in our state from 6 in the morning to 8 at night. And quite often, many of the candidates, as you see in this picture here, they have their signs up and they're holding them. And quite often the candidates that are state reps and so on are there because they're representing your town. So they obviously want to be at the voting booth. Well, you kind of have a captive audience there. And because you have that captive audience, you can sit there and you can go there and you can chat with them. And you can spend forever, if you want, going right down the line. And in fact, many of my kids have done it in the past, and it's a great way to meet them. And throughout the conversation, quite often it always ends with, well, let's hope the election goes well. And if I win, I'd really love to come to your classroom or something, or I'd really love you, to connect with you. And so you can make those connections that way. And, not for nothing, but if you're in the primary, like something like this, and you get really excited about a candidate, you can actually be part of that candidate's campaign. And what I mean by that is you can go out and you can start holding signs, you can go to parades and you can march for them, like pictures of my former students here, excuse me. And you don't have to be 18 for that. Many kids can get behind a politician and get their voice heard and have a role by doing something as simple as, just being involved and going out. Also, talking to candidates can inspire you, and it can make you also want to take part in, maybe a peaceful protest of some sort. So there's nothing wrong with, whether you're marching in a parade or taking part in a peaceful protest. You don't have to be 18 to do that. Quite often, you saw a number of kids when, the Parkland shootings happened at the Marjorie Spellman School. You had a lot of kids going out there and they met at the flagpoles and they had moments of silences and they read speeches. And that happened at all different levels of school, and so kids can easily be part of that. Another thing, like I said, when you make those connections with the candidates, invite them to your school. If you can invite them to your school, what a shock. How neat is it to have your, in this case, Maggie Hassan, who was our governor then and is our senator now in New Hampshire. But when she was our governor, she came and we gave her an invitation to the school, and she came and she showed up, and we had a great chance to have a roundtable discussion with her. And incidentally, which we've always been really positive with a lot of the representatives, senators, governors in our state. And many of my kids have gone on to actually, intern work and so on like that. And a funny story about this situation was that the 3 people that actually came with her, that were her legislative aides that came down with her to Milford on the, when she came to visit us, all 3 of those kids were from Milford. And, we all kind of laughed about it. And she goes, well, I knew one of you were from Milford. I didn't know you were all from Milford. And, she's quite often called Milford High her farm team because we sent so many people to work for her office, as well as back then Kelly Ayotte and Jean Shaheen, Senator Jean Shaheen. And so quite often, by getting the people to come to your school, it makes it a really fun opportunity because, they want to be there. It's a great photo op. It's a great way for the kids to get engaged. Other kids hear that somebody's coming to your school and they can get excited. And it doesn't even have to be a candidate. In this case, we invited, as you can see, and can you see with my mouse movement here? As you can see, we have Mary Beth Tinker and her brother John Tinker, who are from the famous Tinker versus Des Moines case, which established the Tinker standard, which basically defines what expression is in a school. This is where you hear Supreme Court Justice Abe Ford to say, students should not shed their rights at the schoolhouse gate, that famous quote. And that's why they have their armbands, because the case was centered around them wearing armbands to protest Vietnam. They'd never been to New Hampshire before. I invited them and they came. And it was a huge deal. They got on New Hampshire Public Radio. They had a huge coverage from a number of news outlets and so on. And just to put the cherry on top, this lady over here is Kathy Kuhlmeyer. And she is of the famous Hazelwood versus Kuhlmeyer Supreme Court case, which was based around censoring a school newspaper from writing an article about a girl who was pregnant and whose parents were divorced. And so we had two of what I consider holy trinity of Supreme Court cases for teens. Two out of the three cases, we had two of the plaintiffs that came to our school. It was an amazing opportunity for the kids, to get really excited about government because, it was issues that affected them. So, having people come to your school, they can be, they could be politicians, but they could also be civic advocates, or they could be social advocates, or anything along those lines makes it really good. And if they don't come to your school, but there's opportunities to go outside the school, then you can do that as well. In this case, the girl on the right was turning 18, and on her 18th birthday, for a long time, she was part of my Way the People class, and she was a real avid Bernie supporter. And I saw in the news that Bernie was going to be, that MUR, our channel MUR, Channel 9, was hosting breakfast with candidates at the airport diner in Manchester, New Hampshire. So I literally just emailed the news station and said, geez, I've got a really great kid who would really love to do this. Is that something that could happen? They emailed me back. They thought it was a great thing to do. They thought it would be a wonderful idea for her birthday. So I told her mother. The mother was very excited. And I said, the only thing is, to the mom, you have to drive. She can't go it on her own because we've kind of had the school influence to get her the opportunity. The mother drove her up. And lo and behold, the table of 10 that was supposed to have breakfast with Bernie, a person wasn't able to make it. So the mother got to sit on the table of 10 too. And they were both just tickled pink. But again, another opportunity if, you look around. Further, this is New Hampshire Public Radio. And if you have students that are strong, vocally and verbally, and there's opportunity to get their voices heard. I was able to contact New Hampshire Public Radio when they had contacted me about some key topics in our state, and I said, well, how great would it be to have student voices on there? And so, sure enough, they thought it was a great idea. The kids went and they were part of New Hampshire Public Radio, and it got picked up on the national. So, for kids that are juniors and seniors in high school, they were sitting there going, my gosh, my voice is heard nationally around the country about topics that I'm passionate about. So, again, it's looking for opportunities. Further, in our state, we all, just like every other state, there's always a, primary Democratic or Republican state convention to get people involved. And so we go. I ask our Congresswoman if we could be their guests. We always get an okay, and we go. And for example, in this picture, at the time, Kamala Harris, was a senator, still a senator of California, but was campaigning. And so, she met with the kids. Tom Stein, also met with the kids. And you've got to just be nice with everybody because you never know of all these peoples. In this case, it's Mayor Pete Buttigieg from Indiana. You never know who's actually going to go on to become president. So we had the opportunity to meet so many of the Democratic candidates. And for the kids, it was an all-day affair, and they just had the most amazing time of their lives. And it was free and it was open to the public. All you had to do was sign up and get tickets to go. And so the kids were running around. It was almost like if you've ever been to Disney, to Epcot, and you do all the different countries. This was just like that. I was like, oh, who haven't we met yet? Oh, who haven't we met yet? Let's go find them. And not only were they having a blast going to find the candidates, but all the while they're like, well, we should know what they stand for so we can at least sound intelligent asking them things. They're looking in their books and stuff and looking online and scrolling through their phones, about different positions. So the kids were learning ridiculous amounts about these candidates and having a fun time doing it. Other things you can do is things like invite the C-SPAN bus to your school. It's free, it's easy. The C-SPAN bus will come to your school. They'll have the kids come in, and the kids come into the bus itself, and they go through the whole, the whole process of how things go from point A to point B. And for the kids, it's a really fun time because it's cool. It's the C-SPAN bus, and it's parked outside of the school, and only a few people can go in at a time, so it becomes a select thing, and then there's a buzz about it, and people want to do it, and so you can build up something like that. Again, it's just reaching out to have somebody come to your school, and it can be free. Another thing you can do quite often is a lot of states sponsor different contests and so on. Especially around Constitution Day, September 17th, or throughout the whole year, and it's usually write a 300-word essay about this or a 500-word essay about that. Well, every Constitution Day, New Hampshire would have a Constitution Day essay contest, and I would always get the kids to get involved because you never know, somebody's going to win. And in this case, as you can see here, the 5 people in the background were the 5 justices of the Supreme Court. And, for the most part, what would happen is kids would submit their essays and, they would whittle it down to the top 10 essays. And at that point, the justices would, like in this case, Justice Conboy, she was the one who read the final 10 and would select, the top 3. And the top winner, in this case, a girl named Kayla Bullwinkle, the top winner would get to read their 500-word essay to a panel, the judges again, and as well as guests and dignitaries that came. So it was a really honorable thing. And they had a party for the kids that were, all the kids that were in the top 10 and, the top 3 got awards. But it was just a prestige thing. And for the kid, it was a fun assignment. They got to research something. And if they won, they got the august, body of judges listening to their speech at such an immense setting of the New Hampshire Supreme Court. So there's things like that. Also, there's a ton of nights that you can take people. There's always events at night. And in this case, on the left here on the pink jacket is former Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, and over here that he's kind of shadowed, but that's former Justice David Souter, who's also a New Hampshire Supreme, he was a New Hampshire resident on the U.S. Supreme Court. And that night, Justice O'Connor was going around talking about her iCivics program that she was starting up to get kids involved. So what a great opportunity. I saw it in the Manchester Union Leader, and I said, well, wouldn't it be great to take a few kids out? We'll go, we'll watch the presentation. And I emailed her staff and I said, would it be possible for the kids to have a quick little audience with Justice O'Connor? And they said, absolutely. And so how great, here you have a handful of kids who, many of them on the stage, they were under the age of 17, and here they are talking to 2 U.S. Supreme Court justices, O'Connor and Souter. I mean, if that doesn't spark a fire for a kid, it's a great opportunity, and it was a great night out. They got dressed up, they had a great it was really, really neat. What this does, what this excitement does ultimately is to want them to want to vote and want them to be, active and engaged. And really, that's going to be the ultimate goal, is to get kids to the voting booth. And you can do that once they feel like their vote's going to count and once they feel passionate about what they're doing. So what I generally do is I'll have kids, I'll help them register to vote, and I'll help them, get their stickers and so on. And the reality is we would always take a picture of the kids voting. And, a lot of times I sit there and I say, look, you may not want this now, and it may not be important to you now, but when you're 50 or 60 years old and you show your grandkids someday, that's the first time I voted in the election of 2020, or, whatever year it was, it's just a cool little thing. And I go, you may not want it now, but trust me, 50 years from now, you're really going to appreciate it. And the funny thing is everybody in the voting area, they all caught on real quickly what I was doing. So every time I was like, oh, first time voter, a lot of the people around the immediate area would applaud and be like, yay. And so like, it was just something really neat. And for the kids, it wasn't a big deal because we went through the process and we showed them how to do it. To get a kid to vote, they feel like they have to vote for everything on the list, or they have to, circle in all the dots. And it's like, no. Vote for what you're passionate about. Vote for what you know about. You don't have to, it's not a test. You don't have to vote for everything on the thing. So like for us, we have town election, we have a town ballot, and there's a zillion different things on the town ballot. But there's things such as simple as, do you want fireworks or do you want a Labor Day parade? But then there's crazy things like, do you want a culvert adjacent to this piece of property and blah, blah, blah. And nobody has no idea about that. So I tell the kids to vote on the things that they know and the things that they feel passionate about. And when you take them over and you show them how to actually vote, in New Hampshire, we have same-day registration. You can be registered in less than 3 minutes, and you can be a voting member of the community. We have about 15,000 people in our town, and we have about 11,000 registered voters. It's pretty, it's pretty nice when you have that many people who are registered. So it's really kind of cool. And these are all in the state of New Hampshire or in Massachusetts or, any states in New England. But sometimes you can actually even go down to DC. And if you can ever plan on doing something like that, for example, in this case, we got down to DC, and instead of the normal, assault on the Capitol, or, everybody just looking for a photo here or there, we found out that the Supreme Court was in session. And on one of the days that we were going to be down there, they were going to hear the Trump versus Hawaii court case, which dealt on the travel ban. Like, could the president, ban certain ethnicities from coming into our country, or people from different countries? Can they ban people from different countries from coming into our country? So the kids were really excited, and they're like, wow, could we go to something like that? And I told them, I said, well, they take the first 50 that line up. And if you're, basically one of the first few, you can get in and stay and watch the whole thing. And then after, they do a little rotating thing where it's like every 3 or 5 minutes, another group of people will come in. I go, so if you're willing to kind of stand in line for this, because it's going to be a popular case. Well, the people actually started lining up around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the court case was the next day at 10 in the morning. So the kids were like, well, we want to do it. And so we got out there, and next thing you know, it started to pour and rain. And so the poor kids were, basically undercover in the pouring rain for the whole night, to do this. But lo and behold, the next day the sun came out, and we were still in line, and we were waiting to go. And they brought us in, and we got our golden tickets so that we could go and watch the court case. And to this day, many of the kids that are in that picture will constantly send me an email or a snap or this or that and say, that was still the best day of my life. And, it was just so fun because of the bonding of standing there in the pouring, under the blankets and the pouring rain, under the tarps and so on. And it really, they really wanted it, obviously, because who else would do that? But they got a chance to sit in the Supreme Court and look at all the justices and so on. And how much did it cost us? Nothing. In fact, people going by were bringing the kids donuts and pizzas and saying, like, I walked by and I saw you guys, and I'm like, oh my gosh, so I knew on the way back I'd bring you a pizza and so on. And then the kids had conversations with kids and people in line, and all the people in line were sitting there going like, you guys are high schoolers? oh my gosh, I wish I could have done this in high school. So there's tons of opportunity for kids, if you get a chance to go out and do that. Also, another thing you could do is take them to election night parties. At election night parties, you can just, they're generally free. They're all over, like every state has an election night party, for different candidates and so on from their staffs. And so if you contact the staff and say, geez, we'd really like to come to the election night party and show our support, is that okay? Once you're on their list, you're there. And the cool thing is you can talk with a lot of the news reporters and so on like that, because the reality is the news reporters are only doing their job, well, not doing their job, but they're only on camera for a minute or so every half hour. And so then they got about another half hour to do nothing. And if you can see in the background, there's a number of cameras that are up there. There's CNN, there's WMUR, there's Channel 7, there's, C-SPAN, you name it, generally somebody's there. And so this was a great opportunity for the kids to make connections with the news reporters and so on. And, if you have a reporter come in on, First Amendment, freedom of the press and so on, it's really, really cool. And so a lot of times the kids would talk to the news reporters while they're on their downtime, and the reporters were like, wow, these kids really know what they're talking about. So the next thing you know, they get on camera and they're like, well, we want to really ask you kids what your opinions are, because let's face it, everybody wants to know the opinions of the youth of America. And so the kids were on, you name the station, and many of the kids that I had with me were on different news channels and so on. In fact, the gentleman here to the far right was my foreign exchange student from Germany. And when there was a news outlet that was a German radio station that was at this party, at this election night party, and they were like, oh my gosh, you have a kid who speaks German. And he had about a 20-minute interview on German radio, about being in America during an election. And, you talk about a kid who's hooked forever. Now he's doing public policy at Harvard University. So, it's the little things that the kids will remember. They will remember things like this, forever. And you never know, like, this was in 2008 when Barack Obama was campaigning. And, we went to an election night. We went to a Democratic rally, and, you never know which candidates are going to go on. In fact, in this case, Barack Obama was supposed to be, way down on the list, and he emerged as the winner. Just as much as, house parties with, Senator Ron Paul. It doesn't matter how old you are, as long as you're there and so on like that, they'll give you a few minutes of their time. So, I guess the point is you want to make sure that whenever candidates are around, make yourself available to them. In this case here, this was that Democratic convention I told you about in New Hampshire for the primaries. This picture here actually ended up on the front page of the New York Times. And, how exciting for these two kids of mine who were, my We the People kids, to have their picture on the New York Times. And, in this case, it was Joe Biden, who they met, 3 months early, at that campaign night. Well, Joe Biden came to Milford again, and the kids reminded them that, Joe Biden, that we met them together. And sure enough, Joe Biden wanted to meet the kids again. So we had a great opportunity to meet him when he was still campaigning in, in the general election at this point now. And, I guess the key is, always welcome any candidate, because you never know what candidate is going to go on and ultimately win the presidency. And if you have the opportunity to meet everybody, then it's, just a great opportunity to see all the different viewpoints. And for the kids, it's even more fantastic, because at the time, this was a picture with a candidate. Now they're all saying, I've got a picture with the president, So again, this is just getting out there. This was a free event. This was at our middle school that he hosted. He wanted to do a town hall meeting at our middle school, and it was free and open to the public. And all you had to do was want to go. So to recap, to give you some effective strategies about how to get students involved that don't cost anything and that give them real world experience. Again, like we said earlier, I'd say find venues that are, are great to host candidates for meet and greets. Have them go to voting day, talk to candidates, to their supporters, get involved. If they want to get involved in a march or a cause or so on, what a great opportunity. Invite the politicians or candidates to your school. The worst they could do is say no, but the best they could do is say yes, have lunch with your kids and have great roundtable discussions. Look in the newspaper or online. There's constantly, public awareness articles about events that are going to happen in your area. Even if it's something as simple as a talk at the local VFW about, what were the founders thinking or something like that. Get them to go and get them hyped up about it, and, make it a night out. Say, hey, let's go there and let's go get chicken fingers after or something. And, kids have a blast doing that sort of thing, because to them, it's something different than being in front of a textbook. Like I said, real life resources, entering contests, show them how to register to vote. I would, I think it's the most important thing. Kids will generally shy away from something unless it's presented to them. And if you show them the ease by actually physically walking through it and learning and showing them how simple it is, that helps them get over a huge hump. Attending election night rallies, making connections, all the candidates that we would say, that we would meet, we would always be polite and respectful, talk with them and so on. And 9 out of 10 times at the end of the conversation, the candidate would say, well, if there's anything I can do, just let me know. And you're like, well, thank you. And you just keep that in the bank, because then down the road, hey, remember we talked and you said if there's anything you could do? Well, there is. I'd love to have you come to the class now. Perfect. So again, and the final thing is I always say, I always give credit to anybody who's willing to put themselves in the public arena in today's day and age, especially with social media and such. So I give anybody who wants to be a candidate for anything the utmost respect, regardless of, what I think about their political views or this or that. I just think it's a very difficult challenge for many of these candidates today. So people who are willing to do that deserve a certain level of respect. And ultimately, you never know who's going to win. So, it makes it really exciting, because then the kids know and they can make that connection. So those, I guess, are some of the best ways that I would say are how you can have some effective strategies to get students involved in civic education without having to count on your textbook all the time, or the 4 walls of what happens in the 4 walls of your classroom.
I love that. Well, if you want to unshare your screen, then we can get talking just for a few more minutes, just because I have some things I wanted to say. But thank you so much for sharing all of that. Even just compiling all of those photos in the order that you did it, I thought was really effective. And I think it really does tell a story, and it tells a story of a small town in Milford, New Hampshire. So if our town's able to do that, I think other towns would be able to do that. And I think the advice was really valuable. Yes, you guessed it. If you saw some photos that look like me, that was me. This is my dad. we're torn on whether or not we say that in the beginning, but if you stuck around to this point, yes, that's the connection. So I might be biased because this is my dad, but I mean, I think this is just so cool. And it's just so many celebrities. I feel like it was just so star-stricken throughout the whole thing. But like you said, they're just regular people who, just wanted to get in a political office, and yeah, treat everyone with respect and kindness. And maybe one day down the line, you never know how they can help you in the future.
Absolutely.
So that's just my reaction to all of this. I just think it was really awesome. And I think other schools and educators, or even parents and families who want to, expose their children or high schoolers to the political arena, can do so with some of these tips. But I do want to leave this last minute if you have any final thoughts before we conclude the episode.
Well, I think it appeals to all different levels of educators. I have a former student who's a We the People student who is a teacher now in Nashua, and she teaches 3rd grade. And we were talking, and she goes, do you think if I invited, back then, Governor Hassan, she would come to my classroom? And I said to her, you get nothing to lose. Well, she sent her liaison an invitation. The liaison contacted her, And every year now, the senator looks forward to, because now she's our senator, she looks forward to going to, Nashua, to this third grade school, and they have a ball. And you will find great success just wanting to get opportunities for your kids. If some doors aren't open for you, fine. But there's so many opportunities that the candidates or the officials want to have that aura of reaching out to the people, and they want to show that government is of the people and by the people. Well, you can't do that if you don't meet the people. So, the first 3 words in the Constitution are "we the people." And so when you look at getting, you got to disconnect that they're on a lofty palace. They're actually normal people that you'll see at the grocery store. So take advantage of that. Just take advantage of every opportunity, because it might be the thing that makes your kid, do some really great things.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again so much for being here. And Mintz, if you have any questions or comments, you can email us at mintz@merrimack.edu, and I can forward any questions or comments to Dave. And yeah, keep an eye out for any future civic community engagement videos. They'll be coming up within the next month. So we hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.